Made a huge mistake. I brought in these two girls, lovely, enjoyed talking to them, but they were dating a prominent crime family in Palmerston North. And we got robbed 6 times in 2 weeks. Welcome to the NZ Guide to Financial Freedom podcast. It's run by the co-founders of a free online learning platform called moneyskills.co.nz, and it has the sole mission of providing every New Zealander the opportunity to live a more fulfilling life. So let's kick into it. Ooh, exciting. Well, I don't really sound excited when I start, but we're going to talk about home and contents insurance. And, you know, like you might do that out of habit. You might have it, you don't think about it, you just set it up. But, you know, if you can be mindful with your money and how you spend that money, that's going to contribute to your retirement. So if you make good, conscious choices about your home to protect against uncertainty, for the contents insurance, for things getting damaged, and you manage the premium to benefit ratio, then that's going to pay dividends over time. I was just talking to a client not long ago. They were paying $150 for life insurance they didn't really need a week. They could go towards their retirement. So just having this conversation can do a lot for people. But, you know, because I love tangents and, you know, I'm a financial advisor that loves people more than finance, we're going to talk about a story that relates, but it's not finance. It was the first experience when I was a head tenant at age 18. Backstory to that, mum wanted to quit a job as an agricultural scientist, really successful, doing well in that, but getting migraines, frustrated, had enough, so wanted to try something new. And we had a dog, 9 years old, been the house pet for that whole time, sleeping on the other end of my bed. So it wasn't necessarily sheepdog material, but she trained it, took it with her, and then left the house to me, which, you know, privileged life in that sense, but you know, you still got to bring people in and you still got to have flatmates and you got to make sure they're paying the bills. And I made a huge mistake. I brought in these two girls, lovely, enjoyed talking to them, but they were dating a prominent crime family in Palmerston North. And we got robbed 6 times in 2 weeks. I also had the cops come around, found stolen goods, other things. Was not ideal, especially if you're 18, you know, you weren't super confident, didn't know what you were doing, and then you got all this happening. So it would have been useful to have content insurance, though the insurer will probably look at you like, oh, you're a bit of a high risk individual. Are you having us on? But, you know, that's an important story. Just to learn from my mistakes. If you ever, you know, try to tenant your rental property or, you know, you get a flatmate, don't just think about the individual in front of you. Think about who they surround themselves with and look at values and vision and what they're trying to achieve, because, you know, people, they have lip service. They promise certain things and they don't necessarily back it up. So, food for thought, tangent. But you're listening to this because you care about house insurance, which is good. So let's talk about the 3 main types. You got total replacement cover. So if you think about it, it's replacing the whole house. Okay, got it. Where it gets unique is that it's based on the square meters of the house. So it's not just replacing the house willy-nilly, it's replacing the house based on how many square meters it is. So if it gets damaged, needs to be rebuilt, what will that cost? It covers that. But just be mindful, there is an upper limit. If you look under the section, it will say sum insured. It will say under that, it will say the upper limit is like, yo, if you go over that, you know, you're stuffed. Like, don't worry about it. We're only going to pay here. So that's something that might catch you out. The most common one is the second one, which is fixed sum. So you fix the sum, you pick a random number. You're like, all right, I'm going to use that. The part where, you know, you got to be mindful of is it's not that actual sum, it's up to that sum. So what they actually base it on is the house gets damaged, how much is it going to cost to rebuild that house? And the other thing that takes into consideration is the fees that actually go with the construction process. So, you know, you might have architect fees, you might have a site clearance fee. There's different things, but that's the idea is you got this sum, you take into account the fees, and how much is it going to cost to rebuild? And your question might be like, well, all right, well, how do I work that out? Like, is it the CV? Like, what's that based on? Well, most insurers, they have a calculator that you can use on their website. And also, if it's a more complex issue, you can add the quantity surveyor come in. So they come in, they look at, they work it out. This is an important thing because if you've got $2 million cover, it only costs $600,000 to rebuild your house. You're wasting a whole lot of money unnecessarily. The other thing is they'll send out a policy schedule annually. So you just want to revisit if you make changes. So let's say you add a retaining wall. It doesn't take into that consideration that rebuild value in the policy schedule. So just make sure they haven't been sly and changed any sort of exclusions, or, they're not taking into consideration the changes because they don't know about it. So it pays just to revisit it annually, because, if you're paying, $200 more than you need to a year over 10 years, that adds up. That adds up, especially if it was compounding in your KiwiSaver, just saying. And the third one is indemnity cover. So think of that as, what was the value of that? Present day value of the house that are insured. What they take into consideration is depreciation. So you're owning an asset. The value of it's depreciating over time because obviously, it breaks down. It's nature. Erosion happens. So that's indemnity. It's less common. Another thing to be mindful of, if your house was built before 1945, it hasn't been modernized, they might not actually allow you to have that cover, because if you think about it, it's already old as fuck. How much more can it depreciate? It's going to work more in your favor than theirs. And what we've learned about insurers is the house always wins. They need to make more money than they lose. You want that to happen, because then they can't pay out if they don't do that. So the house always wins. They play the statistic game. And if it sounds too good to be true, probably is too good to be true. Now, the next question is, okay, you're deciding which one do you want. Are you going to go for the common one, number 2? You're going to go for the hope my house isn't built before 1945, number 3. But how do you actually save money if you do choose to go that direction? Well, the fixed sum's easy enough. You save money by getting the right sum instead of actually paying too much for something you won't be covered for. But the other thing for all 3 of them is excess. You might have seen this with your car insurance, okay, $500 excess, which basically just saying like, okay, up to this amount, you have to pay it. After that, we'll cover it. So you might think, I might want more of an excess because I've got savings in the bank and I don't necessarily need to rely solely on the cover. It's just when shit hits the fan. That's one way. The other way is, what you can do is you can actually ask, is there something I can do that can decrease this cover, the cost of this cover? And it could be as simple as installing a burglar alarm. The second thing is there's add-ons you might not need. And then another piece is, you can shop around, make sure, are there different prices in comparison? And yeah, obviously the type of insurance plays its part. So you might think as well, like, why are the premiums so high, and what's actually involved in it? Well, there's something called the Earthquake Commission. Their job is, if something happens as a result of an earthquake to your property, they'll pay you up to $150,000 plus GST for the house and the surrounding land, but they don't want to pay that too much, and they got to get their money from somewhere. So when you have private insurance that includes fire, some of your premiums actually go directly to the Earthquake Commission. There's also a fire levy, just to make sure you're looking after the servicemen and ladies, should I say, non-binaries, whatever the thing is today. That's probably upset a few people. Sorry about that. You're valued, you're appreciated. Let's stay on topic. I don't want to record this again, so we're rolling. Then the other thing we've got is content insurance. So there's 2 main types. You got the replacement and you got the indemnity. So same as the other one, except there's not a third, which is the fixed. So you got those 2. Replacement. What is it worth to replace it? Something to be mindful of. If it's older, they might not want to pay it out. Like if it's too old. If you're asking for cash, they may pay the depreciated value of it. So you might be better just replacing it. Another thing with indemnity, same thing. It's what is it worth before the time it got lost or damaged. And an interesting one just to be mindful of, if you don't actually own a property and you're flatting, that it might not actually be covered if you damage the landlord's stuff. So normally it's your stuff and what happens to your stuff, not what you do to someone else's stuff. And you could get like a personal liability insurance for that, just to protect yourself. Another thing to be mindful of, if you put your stuff inside a storage facility, you might need more of a short-term cover, because not always are the goods when they're outside of your house protected. So yeah, you want to check the wording on that. Maybe consider, if you're in between moving houses, are you actually covered? Because once again, we don't want to pay money unnecessarily. If we're going for security, might as well make sure it's secure. Makes sense. And that's the basic idea. So you got home and content, the 3 types of home, the 2 types of content, and a couple things you should be mindful of, and make sure if you have someone as a head tenant, if you're a head tenant, you get new tenants or you get flatmates, make sure you don't just, talk to that person. Think about who they hang out with. And someone not famously, but wisely said to me, he was a recruiter, he said, actually, the people that are the best at job interviews aren't necessarily the best candidate, because to be good at something, you've probably done it a lot. So just because they do well that first time, it's worth having a couple meetings or having a beer and just seeing what they are, because if you can get a great tenant or a great flatmate, it's life-changing. But that's off topic. If you appreciated that, I'd love it if you could give us a review, purely for the fact more people hear it. I'll read out your review. You could get some shameless promotion if you wanted. But yeah, I just want the opportunity for everyone to have a better financial future, because financial literacy is so inaccessible. So I just want that to be available. So if you could do that, thank you. And if you want to do a podcast or write an audiobook, read an audiobook or run webinars, nzaudioeditors.com. Why are you still here? Why are you not clicking that in Google? But yeah, thank you for listening.